Mr. Lewis.
Morning, Mr. Glover.
Good morning.
Would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
My name is Louise Glover, 126508.
Mr. Glover, this is a rehearing for you. You've been through the process before, so you know how it works. So we'll just get started. You're classified as a fourth felony offender. You're currently serving a 32-year sentence for simple burglary, simple escape type 1, aggravated burglary, and armed robbery. Parole eligibility date was October 31st, 2014, and your good time date is August 26, 2024. That sound accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were here in 2020. You came before a parole panel and you were denied.
Yes, ma'am.
You were voted, you got 2 favorable votes and 1 that was to deny. So you were denied. What have you been doing since that last hearing?
I took a NCC class, or like construction class. You know, I don't know if they send y'all the paperwork or not, but I took like a construction class and stuff. That's all they really had for me because I took everything else.
Did you finish it?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it? Was just in construction or what?
It was like basically like different types of construction, forklift driving, CPR, those type of things. You know,
Right.
It's like a good rounder, you know.
Have you been able to have you been able to use any of those skills since you completed that?
I mean, it's like a lockdown facility. It's not like where you can, you know,
Yeah. So
branch out.
you were there at Richland when you took it,
Yes, ma'am.
and so you don't have a job.
No, I don't have none right now. I have worked here before. I have done kitchen work. I have worked off the compound and that type of stuff.
What do you do all day?
Ma'am,
What do you do all day?
well, we just sitting in dome as of right now. You know, I done got a year short, so I'm just really waiting for try to make it to work release or something.
When is your tell me about your conduct record. What's that look like?
Oh, I haven't had a writer since I've been here. I'm good.
And you've been there since since April of 2019.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Tell us, if you were successful today, what would be your transition plan?
Well, I plan on working at a paper mill up in Arkansas. You know, I got a degree in personal training and nutrition specialist. I got different other type of skills where I have worked in a plant and this year and that. My main focus was, you know, to get a job and, you know, maintain.
Well, who lives in Arkansas?
My brother. I had sent out of state compact in and, you know, had his name and stuff on that. Matter of fact, his name is on my paper too.
When did you send in the interstate compact?
I sent it in like a year and a half ago.
Did you ever hear back from them?
No, ma'am. I just sent one to the chairman board, the chairman. Matter of fact, to you.
To me?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me see. I don't know if I've seen that.
Oh, Lord.
You know, I worry about so I'm not the one that processes that. If we got it, if it was sent to me and it was received in our office, they would have sent it to the appropriate place, the interstate compact office. So you did that recently, fairly recently?
I sent it to Baton Rouge, to your office.
Right. So if they got it here,
Yes, ma'am.
they would have sent it to the interstate compact office is also here in Baton Rouge. So they would have forwarded it on to them. So that's why I haven't seen it, because they sent it on. When did you do that? When did you do that?
I done that like 2 weeks ago. But I sent my other one a whole year and something ago, and I never heard from them.
Okay, well we'll see what we can do to find it.
I also wrote you the
we're gonna keep going. Let's keep going.
Okay.
I'm worried a little bit about your violent history.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us in the last 28 years what you've done to address anger issues.
I had took an anger management class. I had took all types of different type of classes. I got over 150 certificates. Like there've been different types of things.
Been busy.
I've been I took anger management on self-abuse classes. I done took almost everything, ma'am.
I see. I see 100. I did not see the anger management. I did
Yes.
see 100 hours. I saw parenting. I saw some substance abuse classes.
Yes,
But I didn't see the anger management.
I got copies of it. I took the anger management.
The same opposition that was expressed at your last hearing from
Yes,
law
ma'am.
enforcement and victims is still there. You
Okay.
just need to know and be aware. That's why I'm encouraged by the idea that you want to go to Arkansas out of state. I don't have any other particular questions. I'm satisfied with the work that you've been doing since your last hearing, and that you haven't had any write-ups. So, any questions by my colleagues? All right, anything you want to say to us?
Yeah, I would like, I would like to first of all, pray that my victims, forgive me for my past action, and if the board decide to give me parole or anything, I ask to be paroled to a work release facility where I can continue my transition back into society. Because I become like a year short now before I go home. And I had work with eligible next year, but I would like the parole board to send me there for 6 months, so I can continue my transition back into society. I had took all the necessary needs to be reformed. I am considered reformed. I have took Christian classes. I done took everything. There's nothing left for me to do. But I would like to go to a work release facility for 6 months. Now that I have just like a year left before I go home and, continue my transition back. Ma'am?
It is just a year. That's, yep.
Yeah, continue my transition back in society.
Well, that tells me you're thinking about it. So that's good. All right, I'm ready to vote. I do want you to, I'll follow up and see if we can locate your interstate compact request to Arkansas. I think it's important that you do go to Arkansas.
Yes, ma'am.
My vote would be based on your low risk score, your good conduct record, your length of incarceration would be to grant you parole after serving 6 months in a work release program.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
to the out of state plan after that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Jackson.
Ms. Glover, my vote is the same. I agree. There's nothing else that you can do that you haven't already done. And so my vote likewise is the same.
Mr. Freeman.
I totally concur. Go to work release, save that money up, don't be spending it in the canteen.
Yes, ma'am. So,
Go to Arkansas and have yourself a good life.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Glover. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
I got to tell you, I like the man. I thought he came in, I guess, like a professional. He's been down this rodeo before, but he came in, very, very like a matter of fact, very to the point. He's done all his programs. He's has no write-ups. He came in asking, knowing exactly what he wanted. He wants to go to a different state, which they're always really happy to do, and to go through 6 months work release so he can have some money to, when he gets out, not completely fail. Now, thank you, Richard, for sending this info, because when I Googled it, I could find nothing. But then I checked my inbox, and sure enough, Richard had filled it with. So we could just take a look at his crime, because the first thing I wanted to know is, tell me he's not a chomo, he's not a roach. Because I would just throw up in my mouth thinking that I just said I like him. But you always have to be cautious. especially when they check certain boxes, like not having any write-ups and having a low risk. And those are like two check marks that roaches check all the time. But no, he doesn't seem to be that. But I haven't read through all the details yet, so let's just check it out. So this is old. This is 1999 that it was decided. State versus Louise Glover. So he's appealing for these three reasons. The error in allowing the prosecutor to amend the bill of information, the error in denying the defendant motion in arrest of judgment, and the trial court error in denying the defendant's motion for a new trial. You can appeal that you can't get a motion for a new trial. I'm not an attorney, as you know, and I don't know enough about it to make a meaningful comment, but these three reasons for appeal seem like a real stretch. So let's see. The facts of the case was on October 30th, 1994. Let's take a blast to the past. And the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office received a call from Miss Jody Simmons. Miss Simmons related that she found a white male covered with blood. Well, this got dark quick. Lying in the middle of River Oaks Drive in Geismar, Louisiana. Ascension Parish Deputy Paul Hall was immediately dispatched to the scene. Upon his arrival at the scene, Deputy Hall found a white male lying in the middle of the road covered in blood. The victim identified himself as Ron Almidi. The victim stated that a black male known to him as Luis had stabbed him. Whoa. Okay. Was not expecting that. And left in the victim's pickup truck. He further stated that Luis worked with him at Furnace Tubes Inc. Wow, that's real smart. Go stab a man who you work with. You're really doing some, okay. Subsequent investigations revealed that the individual who worked at Furnace and Tubes with the first name of Luis was in fact the defendant, Louise Glover. Who would have thought? Detective Mark Peer then contacted the defendant, who denied any knowledge of the incident. No, I don't know what you're talking about. Must have been my twin. The victim immediately identified the defendant from a photographic lineup. There and after, the defendant was arrested. Who would have thought that could happen? On November 1st of 1994, Detective Peer interviewed the victim, who stated that the defendant contacted him concerning money the defendant owed him. The victim drove the defendant's location to the location, picked him up, and was told to drive to the defendant's father's residence to get the money. The defendant directed the victim down River Oaks Drive. At the end of the road, the defendant turned off the ignition switch and took the keys. The defendant stated he was going to red rum the victim and immediately began stabbing him. Holy cow. Dude. Wow. The defendant stated that he was going to red rum. Okay, and stuff. As the victim exited the vehicle, the defendant followed, stabbing and hitting him with tools from his truck. This was like a rage. After getting out of the vehicle, the defendant took approximately $560 out of his wallet and gave it to the defendant, telling the defendant to leave him alone. After again stabbing the victim, the defendant took the money from the truck and fled. So he had the $560 on him. He raged on him, got $560, had to poke him one more time just for, I guess, a couple of giggles. And then he went in the truck. At the trial, that was brutal, man. Whew. He's lucky he didn't pass away. He's lucky otherwise he'd still be locked up. We'll be watching his commutation hearing. At the trial, Miss Simmons related how she discovered the victim and called the police. Deputy Hall and Detective Pierre testified regarding the investigation of the offense, which led to the defendant's arrest. The victim testified and recounted the details of the offense. He specifically testified that the defendant first turned off the ignition and removed the keys before announcing that he intended to red room him. At first, the victim believed the defendant to be joking until the defendant began stabbing him and then demanded money. Why do people do things like that? Well, just never understand it. I know that's such a dumb thing to say, but it's like, here I am rooting on for this guy. Like, oh, I really like him. And then I read about him just doing something that I mean, imagine if you were a fly on the wall in that truck and you saw this happening. It's just hard to understand. At the trial, Miss Simmons related as she discovered the police. The victim testified and recounted the details of the offense. How did he not get a life sentence for this? This is clearly attempted murder. Reverend, oh darn it. Oh well. He specifically testified that the defendants first turned off the ignition. Okay. The defendant did not testify at trial. That's probably the only smart thing you did. The defendant called two witnesses. Charles Johnson testified that he knew the victim and the defendant on, by the way, even using the word victim is like a YouTube thing. Like if I make, I figured this out because YouTube doesn't tell you anything. So you have to figure it out in trial and error. So if I put victim in the title of a YouTube video, it gets demonetized because apparently that can cause a lot of trauma for someone to read the word victim. I know it's terrible. So you just have to use other words. I don't know if saying it causes it to be demonetized or not. I kind of given up on it, but it has become a small fascination for me. Like I've been doing research and it's pretty darn absurd. I watch one thing from a YouTube guy who has like, I don't know, like 13 million subscribers. And he did this rant on how YouTube is absolutely insane. And it was really therapeutic for me to watch it. But because he has 13 million subscribers, he has a designated human that helps him. So he had this YouTube video that got demonetized. So he went through the process, the appeal, and eventually he gets to his human. And it's a really funny YouTube video, like really well done. And but basically the human told him that it was demonetized because in the first like 10 seconds of his video, it was a live gaming stream. Someone said something which was okay guys, focus. And it could have been a different word, but that word, I'm going to butcher this because it doesn't even make sense, but he said a word, but the last four letters in that word, if translated in a different language, is a derogatory word. And because of that, they demonetized this whole video. And this was the human guy explaining it to him. And he said just that how insane that is. So I, it just shows that you just can't, none of it will ever make sense. So you just do it and you don't really, you just throw your hands up in the air and say whatever. On the night of the incident, Johnson and two friends, Derek Thompson and his brother Charles Thompson, observed the victim's truck pass them as it proceeded down River Oaks Drive. According to Johnson, a few minutes later, the victim began calling Derek's name from the woods. Derek ran away and Johnson followed him, suggesting that they call the police, but Derek did not call the police. Johnson approached the truck and observed the truck's door was open and the lights were on. Later, Johnson observed someone else driving the truck out of the woods. I guess they're talking about witnesses testifying. Why he took this to trial is a wonder. They didn't have a good plea deal for him, I guess. But like you said, his 3 reasons for appeal were so bad. You knew this was a close and shut case. The original charges: attempted first-degree red rum and armed robbery, violated double jeopardy because the same armed robbery used as an element of the attempted first-degree red rum was also armed robbery, charging count 2 of the bill of information. Oh man, that's actually funny. On the morning of the second day of the trial, the defense counsel requested a trial court hold a motion to squash the habeas and instead consider a motion in arrest of judgment that defense counsel filed on what is that? No, that's not ambiance. Okay, I don't know this word. Abeyance. I don't know. Does anyone know? Put it in the comment section. I have no idea. However, both the prosecutor and trial court expressed views of the trial had not concluded. I don't know. I'm really not. I'm not going to read any more of this, but he was found guilty. What was his sentence? The defendant argues that the state failed to establish the element of taking. Essentially, the defense argument relates to the credibility of the victim. I mean, the credibility might be that the victim was lying on the road stabbed. Just a thought. In his brief to the court, the defense states, Mr. Ahmadi testified that the defendant had taken $500 from him. However, there is no evidence in the record to support this. No money was found in Mr. Glover's possession when he was arrested. The victim testified that it was late in the evening when the defendant called him and that he was not dressed. He testified that the defendant had called him to pay back money that was owed to him. It is inconceivable that Mr. Ahmadi would get dressed at 10 p.m. and take $500 cash with him to meet the defendant at his house. Mr. Ahmadi's self-serving statement that he was robbed of $500, not sufficient evidence to support conviction of armed robbery. The state presented no other evidence to prove armed robbery. This I actually buy into completely. I totally believe that is possible. That's a good point. He came to him, so he got dressed, put the money in his thing, but then wouldn't give him the money. I mean, I believe that. It could be he just made it up. What happens if you're robbed in this type of incident? You're just out of the money, right? Like, no one's gonna. But anyways, the defense conclusion completely ignores the taking of the victim's truck. Oh, yeah, that's true. He took his truck. Oh, man. Like, hey, there's no proof of them. Well, they're like, well, you took his truck, dude. The defense conclusion completely ignores the taking of the truck. Furthermore, for obvious reasons, it is not necessary in every armed robbery case to introduce the money or other items taken. Often, the money is never recovered, as in this case. I mean, you didn't even need to add this part. I would just say, here you go. Appeal gone. As the tier of fact, jury was to accept or reject in whole part testimony of witness. The victim positively identified the defendant as perpetrator of the offense, testified the defendant turned off the ignition. The victim surrounded his money and asked the defendant to leave him alone, but the defendant continued stabbing him. I don't know why I said it that way. He's like, the victim surrendered his money and asked the defendant to leave him alone, but the defendant continued stabbing the victim before finally leaving him for dead. The defendant then fled the scene in the victim's truck. How much time did he get? This was in 1999. I mean, how much time did he get? How is he out? Is this the same man? I'm sorry if I sent you the wrong guy, because this just doesn't make sense. His record's pretty long. Armed robbery, aggravated burglary, escape type 1, simple burglary, armed robbery, aggravated burglary again, escape type 1. Actually, the escape type 1 is a redundant. So is the aggravated robbery. There's redundancies here. But I don't see an attempted murder in his rap sheet that I'm looking at here in the info Richard sent me. So yeah, I will just have to apologize if this is not the same man. Because all of that would be quite annoying, wouldn't it? Who knows? It's I don't know how else to verify if it's the same man, but I hope it's not. I mean, it is possible that someone could get out for attempted murder, I suppose. This was October 1994. Wait a minute. This was decided in 99, but the fact of the case was 1994. So 10, 20. Yeah, it's possible he got paroled and then committed these crimes. But I don't know. If anyone can find out and know for certain, put it in the comment section. I'll pin it. But anyways, that was a rampage. I don't usually talk for so long on such short hearings, but I guess I'm in a mood. And please do the YouTube thing. And with that, I'll let you go.